So I'm going to have a bit of a faff in the polytunnel, and I've just tweaked the watering system because it was dripping a bit fast on these lower ones and too slow on the upper ones, and they do take a bit of, well, calibrating I guess you'd call it, but they're working well. And on a day like this I can just come down to the plot, turn it on and just let it water, and then I don't have to worry about watering the tomatoes. I do have to focus on all these others, of course. So I'm going to get these cords off of these tomatoes that are lower growing, and it's been identified by the viewers that they're, I think it's intermediate but low growing plants anyway, and they're doing really well, and I'm going to grow them next year because they taste fabulous, and they're called Lata. But these others I'm just going to shifty them around. I think I'm going to put all the taller plants down that end, and when I take out these couple of cords I'll just be able to slide that one up further. That'll leave me a bit of space, and I'm going to take some of these down so that they've got quite a lot of space, get the light into all these plants that I've got up at the top. So a bit of a faff around. I'm going to check through my tomatoes, make sure I've got no shoots coming out that I don't want, and where I've got one or two of these really long branches now, I'm going to try and tie them up to the additional cord that I put on. That's the plan. I'll have a bit of a fiddle and see what it looks like. It's not hot in here, it's sweltering, it's dripping off me, but I've got a lot done. So I've had a real move around, and these plants now got nice spaces around them, and I've repositioned all the watering so that it's dripping nicely into the buckets, and I've also stripped off quite a few leaves, and I think there's a risk doing this. I think there's a chance that you increase the probability of tomato blight, but there's also a great benefit, and that is that the tomatoes get exposed to the light, they ripen well, and I think a bit more space around the bush actually helps them. So they've gone in there. The basil have come off the bench, and that leaves the bench looking a little bit more organised, although it's still a bit cramped here. I need to get these out. And then these lower growing tomatoes have gone into this area in the corner, which is great. That tomato's doing really well. I planted that fairly late on, and I might well pull that out in due course, but everything's shaping up nicely. The salad or lettuce is completely bolted now, and the lion's share of this is going to the chickens every day. They absolutely love it. So this bindweed continues to infiltrate into this bed, and I need to just keep it off of the onions because they really don't like it. It gets round the leaves, just grows around them like a stake and strangles them really. And onions or allium family don't like weeds anyway, so if you can keep weeds away from the base, then that's good news. But these particularly are a bit of a pain. So let's get in and get this big one out. Gosh, they grow so fast. I think I've been in here about 4 times doing this, but it is keeping on top of them. There's nothing short of keeping them under control. There we go, a couple of minutes. So these are my broccoli plants, and they're coming on nicely. I want to get these in the ground by the end of July. So these root trainers are fine for just keeping these going at the moment, but I sold multiple seeds into these little cells, And now I just need to thin this so that all the focus goes into a single plant in each cell. So I'm just going to clip out any that I think are extras, and that will, choose the right one, and that will make sure all the focus goes into one. And there's some here with like 4 and 5 in, and I don't want to keep any of them because there's more than enough plants in here if each cell had one plant. So just take the weakest one out and work your way through, and they'll come along nicely, ready for planting out. So that's exactly the same done with the turnips. And of course, all these are really is microgreens, and they will be perfect in a salad. Good times. Well, that's me pretty much done for today. I just need to water these beds because they do look a little bit dry in here. The heat has been quite reasonable, even though we've had a little bit of rain. Well, the lawnmowers are out, so I think I've probably had enough for today. And these capillary mats just work perfectly for these plants. You do need to make sure the base is on the mat, but it's just great for long, slow watering. So we'll get the rest of this a quick drink, and then it's off home for dinner. Well, it's early, and well, it's going to get scorching again today, so I thought I'd get out while it's still cool. And you definitely can't work in this heat. It's going to hit 27 today, which isn't the hottest place in the world, but it's too hot to work in, especially with no cloud cover. So, well, I've been away for 5 days, and away from 5 days from the plot is a pretty serious length of time at this time of year, because the growth rate can be enormous, and that goes for the weeds too, of course. So let's have a look round and see what I needed to recover when I got back. So one of the biggest problems was watering, and whilst I had somebody who was happy to water the polytunnel, the rest of the plot, of course I couldn't get anybody to water it. And I did have one really difficult plant here in the parsnips. You can see the leaves have crusted up and gone brown, but I've got a new leaf coming out of it. As soon as I got home, I did a bit of an emergency run round and water on the plot, and that seems to have recovered most things. But it was definitely difficult not watering it at all over that period of time. I've definitely got some weeding to do. And just look at the leeks. It's amazing how much weed growth has occurred in there in just that short period of time. And of course, while I'm here, I just pull weeds when I see them, and it just keeps on top of things. Or I just put the hoe round, which is really quick. But of course, when they get to these larger sizes, just using the hoe on them is not really an option. You have to get in and pull them out. So that's a bit of a job if you leave the plot. Courgettes is a bit of an experiment, as most of you know. And I've got to that point where they're beginning to thrive. We've got 3 courgettes on there, and well, plenty of other activity, including some enormous flowers. This is typical of the sort of general maintenance I do. Look away if you don't like slugs, but I tend to get rid of slugs on an ongoing basis, and that really keeps the population down. I'm certainly getting a few froglets coming out of my pond now, but they're not going to be big enough to tackle large slugs. Not this year anyway, but they're certainly getting active. I've seen a few skittering around the edges of the pond, which is fabulous. Now the fruit has been very prolific. When I got home, it was abundantly clear there were a lot of raspberries, and we picked them all. And I can see so many that have formed in just 24 hours. It's incredible how the heat during the course of the day is moving the raspberries on. And today is going to be time for picking these fellas. And these gooseberries are looking absolutely amazing. I've got the feeling there might be a little bit more sawfly around, because I've lost a few leaves off of that in the last week, and looking down here, there's quite a lot of evidence of sawflies in here, so it's like we're having another batch. So I'm definitely going to pick these this morning, because I don't want them to come to any harm. We've got quite a reasonable crop, and these are the sweet ones, which are really delicious. Berries go. There's some fantastic berries around, and these white ones are the same as the red currant family, but they're a white version. And the plants up here, black currants included, are all doing really well and look like they're ready for harvesting. There's some fantastic groups of red currants on here, but the larger plants, let's go down and have a look, are just not ripening at the same rate. I guess that makes sense. There's some evidence of ripening at the top, but equally there's some berries that have not quite turned yet. I was looking around this side this morning. You can see here where some of them are still sort of a pale colour, and we'll wait till those get properly red before we pick them. But there is a lot. We have plenty of red currant jelly. You're not going to believe the growth rate on the squash and pumpkins. Let me show you. So they're just flying. This is going to be across the other side of the path very soon, and we've got some nice flowers. Is this a male or a female flower? That's a male flower. So I'm just looking out to see if we've got any female flowers, and then I might just help with the pollination. What's that one down there? That's a male as well. It does seem to be all male flowers at the moment, but they're absolutely flying along. I seem to have a bit of slug damage over here, and that's the first I've experienced in this season's growth of squash and pumpkins. It's been really useful not having any damage. It's enabled all the plants to get away. But slug damage, another problem when you're away from the plot really, because again, when I see a slug and I do my checks, I can normally get rid of it before it starts doing anything serious in the way of damage. But of course, not while you're not here. A bit of an infestation happening of bindweed in here, which is resulting in all the broad beans sort of crunching down. I think it's time to harvest the balance of broad beans in there. These were the earliest ones I put in, grown in the polytunnel, and the smaller pods when I last harvested, I just left them, and they've certainly got nice and large now, so I think we'll be taking those today. Well, as I said, somebody was kind enough to water the polytunnel whilst I was away, but I have had a couple of issues. I didn't expect them to water everything, just the tomatoes and the peppers. The peppers did dry out in the really warm weather. They seem to have survived without any problem, and we've got lots and lots of peppers forming on them now. The bushes have just got to a really good height, and these dwarf tomatoes are now covered in fruit, which is fabulous to see because we've got quite a few plants. You can see that little cluster in there. It's amazing. So we got, what, 4 of those, and I can see us getting a lot of those cherry tomatoes off them. As far as the larger tomatoes are concerned, I've been a bit concerned because, well, there was 3 tomatoes that had got sort of a black patch on them. I've removed them, and I'm a bit anxious that it might be blight. There's another one starting. So, I don't know, the jury's out. But I've got a suspicion that blight is present in the polytunnel, which is a worry. As far as these tomatoes go, which is Lata, they just continue to produce really nice fruit, and I've been so pleased with those. They're extremely low growing, and I've got a feeling they will grow larger if they were planted into the ground, and I think next year I'm definitely going to put some in here. And you can see the bolted lettuce, which are just looking like towers, and we're going through those daily now, giving them to the chickens, which they love. And then this area will be cleaned out, and I need to think about what to put in there next. The warm weather has meant that the bindweed that I've got in this carrot area is just keeping coming, and of course on a daily basis I would normally get rid of it, but if you're not here it seems to really start cracking on again, and there's plenty of it in here, and I tend to, as I say, remove it regularly. And it's missed me, this carrot bed, because it seems to have got a bit of an infestation all of a sudden. So I'm going to have to work through this and get rid of everything. But they're coming on nicely. And the warm weather is meaning that they're getting lots of nice new growth. And that's the same with the basil. The basil was a bit wilty when I got home after 5 days. And, well, there's a few bits that have suffered. You can see that's not really going to survive. I'm going to take that out. But generally it's recovered, and we can continue to use that without any problem. One thing that really did come on is my purple sprouting broccoli, and it's got those double normal leaves now, so it really is getting to the point where I'll be able to plant it out very soon, and my aim is always to get it into the ground before the end of July. Well, this time of day, it's about 6:30. It's beautiful to be in the garden doing a bit of filming and a bit of work, and the sun's just coming up now, and it's going to get quite warm quite quickly, so I'm going to get on. I think my priority is this bed. I think I'm going to get the net off, and that'll be the net off for the rest of the year, because once I start to see the tops of the leeks hitting the net, then I don't want to restrict the growth. So I think it's net off here and just get these few weeds out. Well, that didn't take too long, but it wasn't as simple as just putting my magic hoe through this, because a few of the plants had some fairly well established roots, and some of them were quite tall. So if you leave the weeds too long, and in this weather 5 days was too long, then it just makes it a little bit of a longer job. But the leeks are looking great, nice and uniform, good height, and fingers crossed we'll have a great crop. The beans have hit the top, so that's good to see. It'll all start leafing up now, and there's lots of flowers on them. There's also lots of these runners coming out, or ends of plants coming out, and I keep sort of trying to push them in, because otherwise I'll just tread on them. But they do like to come out into the path, and these will only go one way round one of these canes, so it's very hard to force them to do anything. They basically follow the sun, and therefore it's one way or no way. Let's see if we can get all of these in, and that way they'll grow up the poles. and we'll end up with more beans. We'll see if that can do the job today, but no doubt when I come back later tonight to water, they'll still be trying to go in the wrong direction. Well, as I'm weeding this bed, so these onions are falling over, and I've already established we've got white rot in here, but literally they're falling over as I go. So I think it's time to take these out, and I've got plenty of onions in the plot. So whilst these aren't in any way really damaged, they're firm, I think it's time to harvest them and use them. And of course, if you get white rot, see how easily they come out, and you can see there's the white rot on there. Let me show you. So you can see here this white powdery sort of substance, and it just scrapes off. But these onions can still be eaten, they won't keep. And whilst I've got plenty of onions, as I say, it's probably best to take these out and use them, and that'll keep us going for a few weeks without buying any onions. So as sad as it is, and these have not bolted, and that was always my problem with onion sets. This one's got a bit better root. You can see there's the difference. Another great example. So this has been partially affected. You can see there's some white rot around here, and that's what the roots could be doing, that sort of length or even longer, but most of them are just short like these, and hence the onion just leans over. So I'll get these out, and we'll have fresh onions for the next week or two from the plot. Well, we'll just leave those in the heat of the sun today to dry out, and hopefully that'll just make them keep that a little bit longer, and then get them home and start using them. Early onions, probably one of the best ways to deal with white rot once it starts to take a hold. Well, I just discovered another benefit of these collars on the courgettes. When you're weeding like that, you don't damage the plant because you can get around it, and if you knock it, you're only knocking the plastic. So that's great. Well, Mrs. K has put in an order for 6 beetroot. I'm not sure she knows how big these are. Look at that. Beautiful. So these were put in at the same time as the ones that are outside, but that extra heat makes all the difference. I've got a bit of bindweed in here. There's a good occasion to get it out. Right, 2 more. What are we going to have? I think we'll have these down here. Well, I don't know what you call 6 beetroot. Perhaps a brace, I don't know. No, that's definitely not a brace, but it's a fine collection. Well, I didn't think in my wildest dreams that we would get that many gooseberries out of these few plants. And if there's anything positive about sawfly, it's the fact that they don't seem to damage the fruit at all. So, well, this part of the world we call the next stage topping and tailing, taking both ends of the stalks off of these gooseberries. And I think there's about a day's work here, so I'm off home. Good times. Well, I'm not the only one who's been busy this morning. Mrs. K's been picking red currants and white currants. So, well, we're going to be busy for a couple of hours. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, And if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.